You can remember the face of someone who embarrassed you years ago, the narrowed eyes, the forced smile, the exact expression they made when they challenged you in front of everyone. Their face can remain in your memory with almost photographic clarity, but 5 minutes after meeting a friendly new person, you may suddenly realize you have no idea what their name is. The face is there. The conversation is there. Maybe you even remember what they were wearing, but the name has disappeared. Why can the brain preserve the face of a rival for years, yet lose the name of a new acquaintance almost instantly? The answer is not that you are careless or naturally bad with names. The problem begins with the way the brain treats names. A name is usually nothing more than an arbitrary sequence of sounds. Unless it already carries some personal meaning, there is nothing about the word itself that explains the person attached to it. Someone named Rose does not necessarily resemble a rose. A person named Hunter may never have hunted anything. The surname Baker tells you nothing about its owner unless that person actually works in a bakery. To the brain, these names begin as isolated pieces of phonetic information. They have no natural image, smell, movement, danger, or emotional meaning attached to them, and information without meaning is difficult to store. The problem becomes even worse during introductions. Imagine standing in a circle while everyone takes turns saying their name. While the person before you is speaking, you are probably not concentrating fully on what they are saying. You are preparing your own introduction. You are thinking about how your voice sounds, where to place your hands, and whether you are making enough eye contact. This is known as the next-in-line effect. When we know our turn is approaching, attention shifts inward. Instead of encoding the other person's name, the brain begins rehearsing what we are about to say. The name may briefly enter short-term memory, but it is never properly connected to the person. A few seconds later, it is gone. Faces, however, are processed by a much older and more powerful system. Long before humans exchanged business cards, created social media profiles, or introduced themselves at networking events, our ancestors had to recognize the creatures and people around them. A face could reveal whether someone belonged to the group. It could signal fear, aggression, illness, attraction, trust, or deception. Most importantly, it could reveal danger. This is where the amygdala becomes important. The amygdala helps the brain detect emotional significance, especially potential threats. When it encounters an angry or hostile face, it can react before conscious thought has fully caught up. You do not need to calmly analyze every facial muscle before feeling that something is wrong. The brain can rapidly tag that face as important. It is almost as if the nervous system places a warning label on the memory and moves it to the front of the biological filing cabinet. Remember this person, they may be dangerous. From an evolutionary perspective, this priority makes perfect sense. Forgetting the face of a predator, an aggressive stranger, or a rival could be fatal. Forgetting the name of a friendly acquaintance usually carries no immediate physical risk. The consequences are not equal, so the brain does not allocate memory equally. Survival information receives priority. Social labels can wait. A famous memory experiment demonstrates this difference through what is often called the Baker-Baker paradox. Imagine meeting two people. You are told that the first person's surname is Baker. You are told that the second person is a baker. Later, you are more likely to remember the occupation than the surname, even though the same word was used. Why? The surname Baker is an abstract label, but the occupation activates an entire network of meaning. You may imagine flour on someone's clothes, the smell of warm bread, a white apron, an early morning bakery, or hands shaping dough. One word creates almost nothing. The other creates a scene. The brain remembers the scene because it can connect it to images, actions, objects, and existing knowledge. A rival's face works in a similar way. It does not arrive as a neutral piece of information. It may be surrounded by emotional metadata, the tense voice, the raised eyebrows, the feeling of being insulted, the suspicion that the person was lying, the heat in your body when the conversation became hostile. Every one of these details becomes another path leading back to the same memory. The name of a stranger may have only one weak path. The face of an enemy can have dozens. This is why one negative encounter can remain more vivid than 10 ordinary greetings. The brain has what psychologists call a negativity bias. Negative experiences often receive more attention and carry more cognitive weight than equally intense positive experiences. Again, the logic is evolutionary. A pleasant interaction may improve your day. A dangerous interaction may determine whether you survive it. When an encounter feels threatening, stress hormones such as cortisol can influence how the memory is consolidated. In the right conditions, emotional arousal can strengthen the neural connections associated with the event. This does not mean cortisol always improves memory. excessive or prolonged stress can damage concentration and make recall worse. But a sharp, emotionally intense moment can make certain details extremely difficult to forget. Each time you replay the argument, describe the person to someone else, or imagine what you should have said, you reactivate the same neural network. Repeated activation can reinforce the pathway. The grudge is no longer only an emotion, it becomes a rehearsed memory. Meanwhile, areas involved in facial processing, including the fusiform face area, help the brain build detailed representations of familiar faces. This is not literally a permanent digital photograph. Human memory is reconstructive and can change over time, but the comparison is useful. The brain creates a recognizable map of facial features. The distance between the eyes, the shape of the mouth, the movement of the eyebrows, and the expressions repeatedly associated with that person. When emotional significance is added to this map, the face becomes even easier to recognize. That explains why you may instantly notice a rival across a crowded room while still struggling to remember the name of the friendly person standing beside you. Fortunately, we can use the same memory architecture to become better at remembering names. The first step is to stop treating a name as an isolated sound. Turn it into something meaningful. If someone introduces herself as Rose, imagine a bright rose attached to her jacket. If someone is named Jack, picture a Jack lifting the chair beside him. The association does not need to be logical. It needs to be visual, specific, and unusual enough to attract attention. Next, connect the name to a real facial feature. Do not choose something cruel or judgmental. Simply notice a distinctive but neutral detail: Daniel's round glasses, Anna's curly hair, or Michael's unusually expressive eyebrows. Then combine the name and the feature into one mental image. Repeat the name naturally during the conversation. Nice to meet you, Anna. So Anna, how did you become involved in this project? This gives the brain multiple opportunities to encode the information and connect the sound to the face. Finally, test yourself before the interaction ends. Look away briefly and try to retrieve the name without help. Retrieval is more powerful than passive repetition because it forces the brain to rebuild the path to the memory. You can even borrow the brain's preference for high-priority information. Instead of creating fear, create significance. Ask yourself why remembering this person matters. Perhaps they could become an important collaborator. Perhaps you will see them again. Perhaps remembering their name will make the next conversation warmer and more personal. The greater the perceived importance, the more attention the brain is likely to give the information. We remember enemies because the brain is designed to protect us. We forget names because arbitrary labels were never its highest priority. Once we understand that difference, forgetting a name becomes less embarrassing. It is not evidence that we do not care. It is often the predictable result of attention, biology, and weak encoding. The solution is not to force the brain to work against its nature. The solution is to give names what memorable faces already possess: meaning, emotion, imagery, and a reason to matter.